Inside a convenience store, Lee, Ju, and Young-chan stand in front of a display case packed with an array of tempting snacks. Lee grabs Young-chan's favorite ramen with a mischievous grin, surprising him. Their laughter fills the small space, echoing off the shelves laden with colorful packages. Can you believe those guys thought they could take us? Ju scoffs, shaking his head. Their numbers did them no good. At the other end of the store, Ijin is deeply engrossed in an existential battle with his onigiri, seemingly unable to find the right way to open it. His eyes flicker towards Lee, observing how effortlessly he peels away the wrapper and digs in. A feeling of infatuation sweeps over Ijin. He finds something profoundly fascinating in Lee's ordinary yet elegant movement. Eager to shift the conversation, Ijin finally musters up the courage to ask, "So, how did that fight even start?" Lee, pausing mid-bite, wipes his mouth and says, "Well, they picked a fight with Young-chan here. That's how the whole thing began." His gaze then shifts to Young-chan. "How are you holding up?" "I'm better," Young-chan replies, taking a moment to process Lee's question. Lee leans in, a seriousness overshadowing his previous jovial mood. "Look, the attitude you carry in situations like these matters. If you act scared, people like them will give you even more trouble." Ju nods in agreement, cementing the weight of Lee's advice. "But what if acting tough gets me hit even more?" Young-chan's voice quivers, filled with hesitation and doubt. "Could happen," Lee admits. "But it all depends on who you're facing. In any case, never show fear. You can make it through if you try." As they talk, Ijin's mind drifts back to a darker period in his life, a time when bullying was much more violent, with the stronger preying on the weak for something as basic as food. Once, someone had tried to snatch his meal. The bully had severely underestimated him, though Ijin is, above all, a survivor. Young-chan, who's been mostly silent, finally speaks up. "You know, I used to hate you guys. You bullied my classmates, and me included." "What?" "We were just messing around." Lee and Ju exclaim, clearly shocked at this revelation. "Just messing around?" "The pranks, the mean comments, it's still bullying, and I hated you for it," Young-chan fires back. The atmosphere turns thick with guilt and awkwardness. Lee and Ju exchange glances and offer heartfelt apologies. "We never thought about it like that. We're sorry, Young-chan." Young-chan looks at them, his eyes softening. "I guess I started seeing you differently when I spent time with you. You guys never stole or hurt anyone physically." As they all share a moment of reconciliation, tragedy strikes. Ijin's onigiri slips from his grasp, crashing onto the floor. The group looks down, then back at Ijin's dejected face. A cloud of sadness hangs over them. Meanwhile, across town in a corporate building owned by SW, Yuna's cousin sits at a desk, her attention drifting to the commotion outside her door. Yuna bursts in, confrontational and furious. "Why are you investigating Ijin? You promised you'd stop." Her cousin leans back, icy in her retort. "We do what we have to do to survive. Don't you remember what happened to you? Just because he saved your life doesn't mean he can be trusted." Before Yuna can argue further, her cousin's guard interjects. "We had no choice. His documents were falsified." Tension electrifies the air, leaving questions unanswered and secrets untold, not only in the room but also in the hearts of those entangled in these complicated relationships. Inside the upscale office building of SW Group, Yuna locks eyes with her cousin. The atmosphere is tense, to say the least. Her cousin leans back in her swivel chair, relishing the palpable tension. "I'm glad you're here, Yuna," she says. "Any minute now, we'll get the call that reveals everything about Ijin. Aren't you curious?" Yuna glares at her cousin. "I'm not curious, no." Their intense stare-down is interrupted by the ringing of the phone. Her cousin picks it up, and we finally learn her name, Shin Jaye. The voice on the other end is calling about Ijin. Jaye's eyes gleam in anticipation. She has been waiting for this moment. But her hopes are shattered when the caller delivers unexpected news. Higher-ups have ordered SW Group to cease all investigations into Ijin. "Are you serious?" Jaye spits out, infuriated. How can we just ignore him? The caller explains that, due to SW Group's governmental ties, all they can disclose is that Ijin is not a threat. Having been separated from his family due to a plane crash, he's someone yearning for home, for family. Fast forward to the next day. Yuna and her friend Sukju walk into school and notice Ijin's absence. Yuna approaches Youngchan and Lee, who inform her that their teacher had called Ijin in for something, assuring her he'd be back soon. Sukju, engrossed in his phone, suddenly announces that the owner of their company is at the school. Yuna's eyes widen in surprise, pondering if he's here to meet Ijin. Her suspicion is confirmed when she spots Ijin conversing with the company owner in the school lounge. Gratitude fills the owner's voice as he thanks Ijin for saving Yuna. Ijin dismisses the praise, explaining that he had only been rescuing his sister, and Yuna was merely caught in the crossfire. Yet the owner insists that Ijin's heroics cannot be diminished. The conversation takes a strange turn. The owner proposes that Ijin become Yuna's bodyguard. Ijin laughs it off, pointing out the impracticality for a high schooler like himself. No ordinary high schooler can take down a gang of thugs and foreign soldiers, the owner retorts. When Ijin questions the efficacy of Yuna's existing protection detail, the owner notes that they can't accompany her to school, depriving her of a normal life. Ijin refuses the offer. He turns to leave, hand already on the door handle, when the owner adds something astonishing. You're not just Yuna's savior. 3 years ago, you gave me the opportunity to be with my son during his last moments. Ijin's eyes widen in disbelief. It had been a perilous request, one that everyone else had deemed insane. Yet, Ijin had accepted it, allowing the owner to reunite with his dying son. The owner continues, his voice tinged with emotion. I've been searching for you. My son always talked about you. And guess what, Yuna is also my daughter. Ijin's mind races as he processes the revelation. He remembers Yuna's father mentioning a daughter roughly his own age. As he stands there, it becomes painfully clear that his past and present are more intricately connected than he had ever imagined. The strings of fate have woven a complex web around him, leaving him caught in a tangle of relationships, decisions, and secrets that span across years and lives. Ijin hesitates for a moment before replying, I can't be Yuna's bodyguard, but if anything happens to her, I won't stand by. The company owner nods appreciatively. That's plenty for me. He then takes it a step further, what's your take on SW Group's guards? They seem quite proud, even though they did little to help Yuna. I'd like to pay you for your opinion. Sighing, Ijin leaves the conversation for the classroom, where he finds Yuna waiting. She greets him, but he ignores her. Class has already started, after all. As he sits down, his mind drifts back to Yuna's father. They had met on a foreign battlefield, where the older man had been a volunteer. Yuna's father had approached Ijin, struck by his youth, and offered him meals better suited to his age. Over time, he became a kind of guardian angel for Ijin, providing him with essentials like food, water, and even a raincoat. Ijin recalls overhearing conversations among his mercenary companions, who scoffed at the funds Yuna's father poured into local infrastructure. They considered it a waste, but Ijin started seeing things differently. Eventually, the day came for Ijin to leave for another assignment. Yuna's father looked genuinely saddened, urging him to visit if he ever returned. Handing him a bag of food and medical supplies, Ijin was moved enough to ask, "Why are you doing this?" "I couldn't leave you alone," Yuna's father replied, "you remind me so much of my daughter." Later, Ijin learned that the volunteer group Yuna's father had been part of was attacked soon after he left. Most of the volunteers didn't make it, which left Ijin with an unsettling sense of regret. His musings are interrupted by Yuna, who pulls him aside to a quiet area. There, Sukju apologizes for his prior distrust, and Yuna extends an invitation from her grandfather. She expects Ijin to decline but is pleasantly surprised when he accepts. Elsewhere, Jaya is still fuming over the denied information on Ijin, when a subordinate interrupts her thoughts. "Ijin is here to see you," they say. Back at SW Group's headquarters, Ijin gears up for training. Sukju quizzes him on his sudden change of heart. "Why did you accept the bodyguard offer?" Ijin ponders the company owner's earlier words. He had only to train with the other bodyguards for a few days to get a sense of the work. I just wanted to see what it's like, he tells Suk-ju, also curious why he isn't training today. I'm on Team 3, only Team 2 trains today, Suk-ju explains. Team 3 is responsible for Yuna, while Team 2 looks after Jaye and her parents. Finally, Ijin walks into the training room, where the team leader introduces him to the squad. One of them asks if he's the high schooler involved in the recent incident with Suk-ju, stirring up new curiosity. What this means for Ijin is yet to be seen, but he's in it now, a complex web of personal connections, responsibilities, and an ever-expanding array of secrets that deepen the mystery of who he really is. The tension in the training room is palpable as Ijin and the members of Team 2 take their stances. Yuna watches intently from the sidelines, thinking that the environment somehow suits him. It's then she spots Jaye, and she can't help but wonder why she's present. The chief, astonished by Ijin's adeptness, quickens the pace. Let's step it up, everyone, he orders. As the session concludes, everyone is gasping for air, except for Ijin. His stamina seems almost superhuman. Both Yuna and Jaye notice, sharing a look that suggests they're both surprised and impressed. The team leader contemplates aloud, how is this kid so good? His eyes then dart to Jaye, a cue that now everyone fears a reprimand for their lackluster performance. One brave soul from the team then proposes a daring idea, can we test him out? A real sparring match? At first, the chief declines, but Ijin steps forward. I don't mind, he says, stunning everyone in the room. All right, gear up then, the chief finally consents, albeit reluctantly. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. After all, most SW bodyguards are special forces veterans. Jaye ponders just how well Ijin will do, while her subordinate openly doubts him. He stands no chance, the subordinate mumbles. As the sparring match is about to begin, the team leader sets ground rules, hold back, this is just practice. The opponent smiles, trying to intimidate Ijin, who remains unfazed. The bell rings, and the man lunges at Ijin with a left hook. Swiftly dodging, Ijin seizes an opening, landing a hit on the man's leg and throwing a punch. The man manages to block it, but as he attempts a counterattack, Ijin blocks it and delivers a powerful punch, hitting an unprotected area near the man's helmet. Stunned, the opponent crumbles to the ground after a swift knee strike from Ijin. The room falls into a stunned silence. Suk-ju chuckles, he really doesn't know how to hold back. Jaye is mystified, pondering, is he really just 19? In the backdrop, her subordinate seems livid, glaring menacingly. The downed opponent is helped out of the room, and a revelation comes forth, the glaring subordinate is actually the real team leader, and the current leader is merely a stand-in. Just then, Choi Byung-suk, one of the team's best, steps up. I want to spar with him, he declares. The stand-in leader is about to refuse when Ijin interjects, let's do it. I'm not even close to tired. The room collectively gasps. Byung-suk forgoes the helmet. I won't be needing this. Ijin tosses his aside as well, raising more than a few eyebrows. Jaye leans in to ask the stand-in leader what he expects from this match. He won't underestimate him, Byung-suk is our ace, and he trains relentlessly. Both men take their positions. It's a face-off that promises to be unlike any other, a true test for both. Byung-suk, the seasoned ace, versus Ijin, the mysterious newcomer. The room holds its breath, waiting for the clash that could redefine the pecking order in this complicated world of guards, heirs, and undisclosed skills. The air is thick with tension as Ijin faces off against Byung-suk, one of Team 2's best fighters. Yuna's bodyguard leans in and observes, in a straight-up fight like this, it all boils down to physical ability. This won't be easy for Ijin. As the sparring begins, it's immediately apparent that both fighters are evenly matched. They trade blows, each masterfully blocking the other's attacks. You can't break my defense, Byung-suk taunts. But Ijin proves him wrong. Spotting a vulnerability, he strikes Byung-suk's knee, causing the man to falter and drop his guard. Seizing the moment, Ijin lands a series of quick blows. Byung-suk's face flushes with anger. In a fit of rage, he lunges at Ijin, fist flying. But it's a mistake. Lee-jin effortlessly blocks the punch and counters with a precise hit to the neck, ending the spar. Remarkable, notes Yuna's bodyguard. He capitalizes on every opportunity. Lee-jin turns to the rest of the team. Anyone else want to give it a try? A wave of silence rolls through the room. The stand-in leader starts to comment on Lee-jin's unique fighting style but cuts himself off, realizing that it'd sound like sour grapes after being bested by a high schooler. Jae steps up, cutting through the silence. Impressive performance from basic training through sparring, she says. It's time for the real thing, and you're coming with me. Meanwhile, inside his office, the company owner is talking to someone, presumably another guard. Can you believe Jin is just a kid? The code name itself is legendary, he must have been exceptional even younger than he is now. Back in the changing room, Lee-jin swaps his athletic attire for a sleek suit, transforming his demeanor entirely. At his house, his grandfather inquires about his whereabouts. Daeun replies, he has something going on, he'll be late. The old man murmurs a wish for peace, hoping Lee-jin will steer clear of fights. Inside the SW building, the stand-in leader scrutinizes the team, his gaze icy and stern. Get ready for some rigorous training, he seems to say without uttering a word. Yuna spots Lee-jin as he emerges from the changing room, now looking dapper in his suit. The disdain among the team members is palpable, their resentment amplified by his appearance. The next phase begins, and Lee-jin is directed to sit next to Jae. As he takes his seat, his eyes dart around, sizing up the number of bodyguards in the room. His evaluation is interrupted when Jae asks, ever thought about becoming a celebrity? My company handles entertainment, and that's our destination tonight. I'm not interested, Lee-jin responds, staying true to his cover story of aspiring to be a bodyguard. You certainly have talent, Jae observes, reflecting on how effortlessly he defeated 2 team members. The stand-in leader overhears and bristles at the compliment. Lee-jin senses the tension and says, they were caught off guard. I had the advantage from the start because they had to be careful with me, I'm just a student. Jae appears puzzled. You could have bragged about it. The team leader, overhearing this, realizes Lee-jin was being considerate, understanding the precarious situation they all find themselves in. He can't help but respect the young man a bit more for that. The car glides smoothly through the night, reaching their final destination. The team leader, who has been observing Lee-jin, notes that the young bodyguard hasn't budged for the last hour. Where did you get your training? He finally asks. Your skill level suggests a rigorous regimen. I learned in my neighborhood, Lee-jin replies, a statement the team leader assumes must be a joke. Yet, the look on Lee-jin's face suggests he's telling the truth. He'd had to run, train, and even fight to survive where he grew up, sometimes with life or death stakes. Jae glances over. Are you okay? It's getting late. I'm fine, Lee-jin assures her. You don't seem new to this, she observes. It's my first time, he reiterates. The team leader marvels at how Lee-jin has remained unfazed, despite them intentionally withholding dinner. Just as he's lost in these thoughts, Lee-jin's eyes sharpen. A truck barrels toward them, its driver unconscious. Despite the driver's attempt to swerve, the vehicles collide, sending the car into a spiral. Before the team leader can even check on Jae, he finds that Lee-jin has already shielded her. How did he react so quickly? The team leader wonders. Jae wriggles out of Lee-jin's protective grasp as another guard rushes over to confirm she's okay. The accident, they find, was due to drunk driving. The team leader instructs his men to call an ambulance and scrutinize the truck driver for any ulterior motives. Jae looks at Lee-jin, who sits serenely despite the chaos. Are you okay? She asks. I'm fine, he assures her, then adds, you should always wear a seatbelt, even in the back seat. Puzzled, she nods, I will. The next day, Daeun prepares lunch in their home kitchen. Why so early? Lee-jin asks. I'll bring it to your workplace, she replies. I used to do this often before you started coming home late. Let me come with you, he suggests. When they arrive at his workplace, a colleague notes the grandfather's sunny disposition and invites him for some rice cakes during the break. Go ahead, I have some recycling to do, Grandpa says. As he sorts through the trash, his thoughts drift to cherished memories with Ijin, filling him with joy. Suddenly, a commotion erupts nearby. A man is yelling at another to move his car, which is blocking the passage. The car owner storms over to the trash area and carelessly flings his garbage onto the ground, missing the cans right in front of him. Without a word, the old man bends down and picks up the litter. Despite the minor disturbances, life's joyful moments shine brighter in his memory. The grandfather knows that whether it's picking up someone else's trash or watching Ijin swiftly grow into his newfound responsibilities, the important thing is to handle challenges with grace, just as his grandson does. Grandpa was diligently sorting through the garbage when he heard Dayun's voice. Turning around, he saw her and Ijin approaching, lunch bags in hand. "What brings you two here?" Grandpa asked, a smile forming on his weathered face. "We brought you lunch, Grandpa," Dayun chimed, glancing at the pile of recyclables. "Need help?" "Sure, it accumulates if you don't keep up," Grandpa replied, and Dayun cheerfully rolled up her sleeves to assist. Across the way, Dusik and his subordinate emerged from an apartment complex. "Finally, a good night's sleep in my own bed," Dusik sighed. Spotting Ijin in the distance, his subordinate commented, "Hey, isn't that the patrolman's grandson?" Dusik also noticed Dayun, assuming her to be Ijin's sister. Ijin, unaware of their presence, had a carefree smile. "I've never seen that kid look so normal," Dusik mused to himself, opting to keep their distance to avoid spoiling the family moment. After a hearty lunch, Dayun and Ijin left, leaving Grandpa in high spirits. That evening, as he finished his shift, he saw a familiar car improperly parked. Approaching the owner, the troublemaker from earlier, Grandpa advised, "You can't park here, it'll block others." "Who are you to tell me where to park?" The man sneered. Just as his girlfriend chimed in, threatening Grandpa with job loss, a hand clamped down on the troublemaker's neck. It was Dusik's subordinate, who sternly ordered, "Move your car, now. Disrespect this man again, and you'll regret it." As the car sped off, the subordinate's expression softened. "Are you all right?" he asked Grandpa, who thanked him for his intervention. "No need for formalities. Do you recognize me? I've been around here a lot, even visited Ijin recently." Recognition dawned on Grandpa's face. Later, as he recounted the incident to Dusik over drinks, the door slammed open, revealing an irate Ijin. In his hand, he held up a text message from Grandpa, a photo of him with the subordinate. "Is this some kind of threat?" Ijin demanded. Both Dusik and his subordinate hastily tried to defuse the situation. "Whoa, calm down. It's a misunderstanding," Dusik assured him. Inside the SW building, Jaye turned to the team leader with a question on her lips. "How's Ijin? Is he okay?" "We took him to the hospital. He has some mild injuries but nothing to worry about," the team leader replied. Jaye felt relief flood through her but noted, "We should still check on him. He's young, and if he got hurt on the job, it could become a big deal." Meanwhile, in a changing room, Sukju couldn't help but notice Ijin's composure. "You seem a lot calmer than during our last practice. What changed?" "I didn't understand the rules here back then," Ijin explained. "Plus, standing out isn't always good." "And what are you doing here?" Ijin fired back. "I thought you quit being a bodyguard." Sukju sighed. "I was never a bodyguard to begin with. I got into it because of family connections and my relationship with Yuna. But Yuna got kidnapped once because of my negligence." As they spoke, Yuna appeared, standing shyly outside the changing room. "Will you be my bodyguard today? It could be a good learning experience," she suggested, surprising everyone within earshot. Shortly thereafter, the trio found themselves in a local convenience store. "I've always wanted to try this food," Yuna said, biting into a snack she had only dreamed of eating while in America. Ijin stared at his onigiri, memories flooding back. When Yuna asked if there was something he'd like to eat, he shook his head. "I'm on duty, I shouldn't." Sukju interjected, "Relax, Team 3 has got eyes on her. We can afford to act normal." Yuna's attention then shifted back to Ijin. "You were in that car crash recently. Is everything okay? And I hope Jaye didn't give you a hard time." "She was fine," Ijin responded, causing Yuna to marvel at how uncharacteristically lenient her friend had been. Sukju observed Yuna's behavior with curiosity, silently noting that he'd never seen her act this way before. Ijin's mind, however, drifted to a darker place, a memory of Yuna's father urging him to leave him behind as he was dying. "I wish I could see my daughter one more time," her father had whispered, filled with regret. Ijin had urged him then, "Don't die regretting. Get up, live. See your daughter again." Now, Ijin decided it was time for a private talk. "Can I speak with you alone, Yuna?" Of course, she replied as Sukju took his leave. Sitting across from her, Lee-jin finally asked the question that had been eating at him. Tell me about your father, Shin In-guk. What kind of man was he? Hesitant at first, Yuna eventually responded. He was always busy, always overseas. Yuna looked across the table at Lee-jin, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and understanding. Even when he was dying, he was overseas, she said, speaking of her late father, Shin In-guk. I didn't even get to see him one last time before he passed away. If I'm honest, I do resent him a little for that. Lee-jin listened carefully, her words resonating with the words her father had shared with him. He once told me that what he was doing here wasn't pointless, Lee-jin began, choosing his words cautiously. He said when he looked at children, like you, he felt a responsibility as a father. He knew he'd made mistakes, wished he had spent more time with you. He said family is more important than any job. Pausing for a moment to let his words sink in, Lee-jin continued, before he was taken away for medical treatment. He asked me to tell you something. He wished he could have seen your face one last time. He was truly sorry that he couldn't. A profound silence enveloped the room. Yuna's eyes moistened, the weight of her father's unspoken love and regret finally landing on her heart. When did you meet my dad? She finally managed to ask. That's all I can tell you, Lee-jin replied, rising from his seat. He left Yuna in a state of emotional disarray, contemplating the new revelation about her father. As Lee-jin walked away, he reflected on the gravity of the request Shin In-guk had given him. It was not just a message for his daughter, it was a lifeline thrown to Lee-jin himself. A plea to get out of the deadly battlefield they both found themselves in. The next day, a knock on the door broke Lee-jin's train of thought. Opening it, he found the lieutenant standing there. They sat down, and for the first time, the lieutenant and Lee-jin's grandfather met face to face. I came to Korea with Lee-jin, the lieutenant began, but I didn't want to intrude on your family reunion. So you're the one who helped him come back, the grandfather said, bowing deeply in gratitude. We thought you were from the embassy. We had no idea a lieutenant was involved. The lieutenant was visibly moved. No need for formalities, he insisted, then spun a tale about how Lee-jin had guided him when he was assigned overseas. As they sat down for lunch, the lieutenant noticed Dayun, Lee-jin's sister. She's like a sister to me as well, he said, inviting her to call him Oppa, not considering the age gap between them. As they ate, the lieutenant consumed his meal with unusual speed. A tear trickled down his cheek as he said, "It's been so long since I've had a home-cooked meal." The grandfather assumed some tragic backstory, but the lieutenant chuckled, "No, it's just that my mom is a terrible cook, and my dad prefers to eat out. One of the best parts of enlisting was the food." As they laughed together, Lee-jin couldn't help but feel a sense of familial warmth in that room, something that had been missing from his life for so long. After leaving the family gathering, Lee-jin found himself at a convenience store with the lieutenant, who went by the name Hamchan. "The guys back at the base send their regards," Hamchan said, eliciting a fond smile from Lee-jin as he thought about the memories he'd created with them. "So, what brings you here?" Lee-jin asked, curious about the sudden visit. "I had some official business in the area and couldn't resist stopping by to see you," Hamchan explained. "By the way, your grandpa and sister seem like good people." "Yeah, they are," Lee-jin agreed, his heart swelling with a newfound sense of family. Suddenly, Hamchan stood up. "I have to go meet my fiancé," he declared, catching Lee-jin completely off guard. "You're engaged?" Lee-jin's eyes widened in surprise. "Don't look so shocked." "Yes, I can get a girlfriend, too," Hamchan chuckled. "It was arranged by a wealthy family. I'm not complaining. Given my nomadic lifestyle, there's hardly time for romance." As he prepared to leave, he looked at Lee-jin thoughtfully. "Have you figured out what a family is?" Smiling, Lee-jin replied, "I think I'm beginning to understand." Meanwhile, inside the SW building, Hamchan found himself face to face with his fiancée, Jaye. "You must be busy," she said, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "I could say the same about you," Hamchan responded. Jaye looked surprised, she'd never thought she'd be engaged to a soldier. "We've met only 14 times, even though we've been engaged for a year," Hamchan noted. "We're both too busy." Changing the subject, Jaye pulled out a file on Lee-jin. "I want you to investigate him," she said. "The government won't do it." "I can't help with that," Hamchan replied, his face turning serious. Jaye nodded, slightly taken aback, but understanding. Hamchan couldn't help but think how much he cared for Lee-jin. Days later, Lee-jin received a disturbing phone call. Hamchan and his squadron had been stranded, cornered by the enemy. The anonymous caller was none other than the owner of SW Group, who warned him not to try anything rash. "The situation is dire. The military is working on a rescue. Don't you dare go out there," he cautioned Lee-jin. You have a family now. Torn, Ijin thought about all the moments he'd shared with Hamchan, the conversations, the cover-ups, and the hard times. Hamchan had always been there for him. He remembered when he'd told Hamchan his real name, how they'd celebrated the news of his family, and the lieutenant's gentle smile. Confused and agitated, Ijin found himself back at the dinner table, where his sister Dayun and grandfather were chatting about the enjoyable meal they'd had at his workplace. He sat there, staring blankly, lost in a sea of conflicting emotions. Should he risk everything for the man who had become like a brother to him? Or should he stay put, honoring his newfound responsibilities to his family? His grandfather and Dayun, absorbed in their conversation, didn't notice the storm raging within Ijin. But he knew, as he sat there, that he would soon have to make one of the toughest decisions of his life. And whatever he chose, things would never be the same again. Sitting at the family dinner table, Ijin found himself grappling with a heavy question. Finally, he turned to his grandfather and asked, "How do you go about repaying someone who has helped you in the past?" His grandfather looked thoughtful for a moment. "Well, that's a complicated question. It depends on the nature of the favor and what you can do in return. But one thing is certain, the person who helped first is often the greater, as they acted without expecting anything back. In life, you'll find times when you must return kindness, and if you can't, then do what's within your power." Ijin thanked his grandfather, emotion swelling in his chest. "I'm really glad to have met you again," he said, echoing the sentiment to his sister, who blushed in embarrassment. Seemingly settled, Ijin excused himself and called the owner of SW Group. "I'm going. Prepare whatever resources you can," he said, his voice tinged with resolve. Meanwhile, in a precarious location, Lieutenant Hamchan was struggling to keep his unit together. A soldier approached, informing him that the men were exhausted and one had lost significant blood. Hamchan knew they needed to move to the next area for any hope of rescue, yet their supplies were perilously low. At the enemy camp, the boss seemed surprised Hamchan's unit had lasted this long. "If he didn't have civilians to protect, we'd be the ones in trouble," the boss mused, rubbing an old wound, given to him, evidently by Ijin. Aboard a plane headed for Gryan, Ijin pondered his mission briefing. Hamchan had been ambushed while evacuating Korean researchers. Just as the plane prepared to land, Ijin felt a surge of energy, a red line appearing in his eyes. He was ready. Back at school, Yuna found herself worrying. She'd called Ijin several times, but he hadn't picked up. In Gryan, Ijin studied footprints and bullet casings, concluding that Hamchan must be headed for the third checkpoint. In a different location, Hamchan and his soldiers were fending off yet another wave of attackers. Spotting a rocket launcher, Hamchan took aim and eliminated the threat, making the projectile miss its target. The attackers retreated, for now. Upon consulting his men, Hamchan learned there were no new casualties, but they were low on ammunition, and the next checkpoint was still 3 hours away. "They're wearing us down," Hamchan realized, understanding the enemy's tactic of hit and run. Initially, he thought the attackers were disorganized, but now he recognized a chilling pattern: they were being herded, step by agonizing step, toward a fate he didn't want to consider. As Hamchan assessed their grim situation, Ijin was closing in, his resolve unwavering. He thought about his grandfather's words, about the nature of help and kindness, and knew that he had no choice but to act. For Ijin, the question of whether to help someone who had once helped him had been answered, not in words, but in deeds. And as he geared up, somewhere between the sky and the unforgiving ground of Gryan, he knew he was about to repay a debt that went beyond simple gratitude. It was a debt of shared experiences, of life and near death, and as the plane descended, he steeled himself for whatever came next. Lieutenant Hamchan knew their best shot at survival was reaching the third checkpoint and holding it until rescue arrived. "We will get back, no matter what," he vowed, rallying his weary men. In a hidden location, the boss received news that everything was proceeding as planned. An agitated man stormed into the tent, yelling that they were losing men for no reason. The boss rose menacingly, informing him that they were up against special forces. If they'd gone all in, the boss contended, they'd have suffered devastating losses. Before the man could argue, he was promptly shot by the boss's henchmen. "Dispose of them. They've served their purpose," the boss ordered, gesturing to his fallen men. Back with the lieutenant, a soldier informed Hamchan they were just 500 meters away from the checkpoint. Hamchan instructed his men to proceed cautiously, suspecting the enemy could be lying in wait for them. Meanwhile, the boss reveled in what he thought was impending victory. "I live for the moment when a trapped beast realizes there's no escape," he gloated to a subordinate. However, as Hamchan's unit moved closer, they discovered their pursuers had been taken out. The boss erupted in fury upon hearing the news and immediately barked into his walkie-talkie for an update. A voice crackled back, revealing they were under attack. Before he could ask who their assailant was, the line went dead. The hunter had become the hunted, and that hunter was Yi-Jin. Calculating that Hamchan's team would be safe in 30 minutes, Yi-Jin decided to engage the enemy and hold them off until then. He moved like a shadow, picking off multiple enemies with lethal accuracy. The adversaries tried to pinpoint his location, but Yi-Jin was always one step ahead, exploiting the terrain to his advantage. In the distance, Hamchan noted the firefight and wondered who could be engaging the enemy. He ordered his men to hunker down and wait for backup. Meanwhile, Yi-Jin sensed the enemy had figured out his strategy. He didn't have the upper hand anymore. Crawling to a nearby bush, he took out 3 men planning to ambush him. Glancing at his watch, he realized only 14 minutes remained. Back at the checkpoint, one of Hamchan's men announced that a rescue team was on the way. Suddenly, a walkie-talkie buzzed to life. It was Yi-Jin. "I'll be there in 3 minutes," he said, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Hamchan quickly put 2 and 2 together. It must be Yi-Jin, he thought, the one who took down those men and gave us this fighting chance. As the dust settled, Lieutenant Hamchan noticed a figure emerging from the bushes, hands raised. It was none other than Yi-Jin. Just as a rescue plane touched down, the lieutenant hurried over to Yi-Jin, gripping his clothes tightly. "Why are you here?" "This isn't like before," he demanded, a mixture of relief and disbelief on his face. "That's precisely why I came," Yi-Jin calmly responded. "If I hadn't come after hearing you were in danger, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." At these heartfelt words, the lieutenant found himself overwhelmed with emotion. What was he going to do with a man like Yi-Jin? They all managed to evacuate safely, leaving the battlefield behind. Meanwhile, the boss arrived at the scene, his eyes quickly scanning the damage. "Team Alpha is entirely wiped out, and we've lost 17 out of the 20 in Team Delta," his subordinate reported. Frowning, the boss considered the day's losses. The only time he'd witnessed such tactics was when 001 was still under his command. Clutching his old wound, he ordered a new investigation into 001's status, refusing to believe the legend had been eliminated. Back at the training grounds, Yi-Jin continued with his exercises for Team 2, his focus unbreakable. Yuna watched from the sidelines, while Sukju, another trainee, seemed particularly restless. He couldn't stop stealing glances at Yi-Jin, desperate to outperform him but falling short every time. After training, inside the changing room, Sukju noticed Yi-Jin's bleeding arm. Yi-Jin quickly concealed it, but not before Sukju could surmise that the wound must be severe if it had bled through the shirt. And yet, Yi-Jin still had the best scores. "You must have been training a long time to perform like this," Sukju finally admitted, his pride slightly wounded. "I've been called a genius all my life, but I'm not planning on losing. I've noticed you trying to outdo me," Yi-Jin acknowledged, smiling gently. "I get it. We're the same age, and I've heard you're being trained to be Yuna's aide. Everyone has different skills." Sukju nodded, confirming that he'd been groomed for such a role since childhood, thanks to his family's legacy. As they exited the changing room, Yuna greeted them warmly. "Great job, guys. And Yi-Jin, where were you these past few days?" she asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Before he could answer, Yi-Jin's phone buzzed. It was a call from Lieutenant Hamchan. "Something came up," he said cryptically, casting a glance at Yuna and Sukju. He answered to find Lieutenant Hamchan on the other end. "The injured soldier made it through surgery," he relayed, relief evident in his tone. "And it's all thanks to you, Yi-Jin. Had we been out there any longer, things could have taken a much graver turn." The gratitude in the lieutenant's voice was palpable. But as the thank yous faded, the lieutenant's tone grew stern. "I don't want you stepping foot on a battlefield again. Think of your family." Yi-Jin interrupted him gently. "It's because of you, Lieutenant, that I have a family now. I felt it was only right to be there." Their conversation ended on a heartfelt note, with both men acknowledging the depth of their bond. Yuna, curious, approached Yi-Jin, asking if he planned to head home. "No," he replied, "I'm meeting some friends at a PC cafe." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Can I join?" The scene they walked into at the cafe was far from what they expected. The place was in shambles, with a visibly distressed worker trying to clean up the chaos. Sukju, equally alarmed, inquired about the mess. The worker explained, "Students from your school were here, just chilling." But then a group from another school barged in and all hell broke loose. Suddenly, Yi-Jin's phone buzzed. Outside the cafe, young Chan was in trouble, fleeing from a gang of menacing students. He reminisced about the altercation inside, recalling how his friends Lee and Ju bravely fought against the intruders. They were outnumbered and exhausted, especially when the formidable Jiu Incheon joined the fray. Lee tried to challenge Incheon directly but was overpowered. The scene took a darker turn as Incheon brutally beat Lee, leaving him bloody and motionless. Another student interrupted Incheon's onslaught, mentioning a character named Kitaisu. Lee-jin's mind raced, piecing the puzzle together as Young-chan provided more details. "It's all my fault," Young-chan lamented. "I picked a fight a while back, and now they're retaliating." Jiu Incheon is the right-hand man of Kitaisu, the toughest guy in Gosuk High. They're even rumored to be in touch with the local gangs. Lee-jin, with an air of determination, asked for their last known location. When Suk-ju mentioned the nearby subway alleyway, Lee-jin immediately began to move. Memories of the good times he'd shared with his friends flooded his mind, pushing him forward. Suk-ju, sensing the gravity of the situation and not willing to let his friend go alone, also decided to follow. He was ready to face whatever awaited him in that dark alleyway, fueled by the love and loyalty he felt for his friends. And as the duo made their way there, it became evident that they'd do whatever it took to ensure the safety of their comrades. The atmosphere outside the bar was tense. With a boyish grin, Suk-ju responded, "I'll be back soon," and made his exit. Yuna, ever the adventurous spirit, attempted to follow but was promptly stopped. "You don't need to get involved. We'll handle it," her guard insisted. Yuna responded with a playful pout, making the guard squirm in discomfort. Young-chan, wringing his hands nervously, mused out loud, "I wonder if Lee-jin can handle all those goons by himself." That's when Suk-ju rejoined them. "We're classmates after all, I can't just stand by," he declared. Their rescue party was set. Upon reaching their destination, an eerie silence greeted them. Suk-ju spotted the discarded, smashed phones, making a grim observation. "They've been dragged away." The sight of the bloodstains made Lee-jin's heart race. But before they could investigate further, a group of thugs, having recognized Young-chan, emerged from the shadows. Young-chan gulped nervously. Suk-ju muttered, "This could be our chance to get some answers." What followed was an intense exchange. A thug lunged at Lee-jin, but his attempt was futile. Another tried to blindside them, but together, Lee-jin and Suk-ju managed to overpower them effortlessly. Even Young-chan, who had witnessed numerous brawls, was in awe of their prowess. Lee-jin then cornered one of the dazed thugs, his gaze piercing. "Where are Lee and Ju?" he demanded. The thug defiantly responded with a rude gesture, leading to a swift, retaliatory action from Lee-jin. Suk-ju, ever the diplomat, gently interjected, "Let me handle the questioning." He was busy displaying his cruelty by bludgeoning two unfortunate souls with a baseball bat. He then recounted a recent humiliation, being questioned by a senior about rumors that 4 students from Shannan High had beaten up 10 of his best men from Gosuk High. The implied threat from the senior was clear: if Taisa didn't regain his standing, his position in the gang might be compromised. Taisu, ever the bully, rounded on Incheon, demanding to know why they had only captured 2 of their targets. Incheon, sensing Tisu's volatile mood, treaded carefully, offering apologies and excuses. But Tisu's focus soon returned to Lee and Ju. Presenting a sadistic choice, he stated, "The first to speak gets to leave." "The silent one? Well, he works for us." Despite their dire situation, Lee and Ju burst into laughter, sarcastically accusing Taisu of overdramatizing like he was in a movie. Tisu's patience ran out, and he lunged at the duo, bat in hand, unleashing his fury. However, an unexpected crash echoed through the bar. Taisu, along with his gang, looked up in alarm. The front door guards were sprawled on the ground, unconscious. The noise inside the bar ceased, and the tension was palpable. It was evident Lee-jin, Suk-ju, and the rest of the rescue team had arrived. Taisa glared at the newcomers, incredulous. "How did you even get in here?" he growled. Young-chan glanced at his friends, Lee and Ju, battered but still standing. Lee-jin and Suk-ju looked unfazed, their faces devoid of emotion. Around them, the bar patrons erupted into laughter. Their way out of their league, Young-chan thought, eyeing the room nervously, trying to gauge just how many of Tisu's men were present. Casually, Taisa dropped his bat and slid into a chair, gesturing for his men to launch their attack. Incheon smirked to himself, thinking, finally, a chance to redeem ourselves. These kids are done for. But the smirk quickly faded from his face. Within moments, Lee-jin and Suk-ju dispatched Tisu's goons with an almost supernatural ease. The room fell silent, eyes widened in shock. Incheon, his pulse quickening, yelled, "Don't just stand there. Get them!" Another wave of goons stormed in. Lee-jin acted first, launching into the air and landing a devastating kick that floored 2 thugs instantly. Suk-ju wasn't far behind, dealing with his own set of attackers. All Young-chan could do was stand there, dumbstruck by their efficiency. As the brawl continued, Suk-ju found himself momentarily restrained from behind. But before anyone could capitalize, he broke free, disposing of his assailants in swift, calculated moves. Taisu, now visibly rattled, dropped his cigarette. One by one, his goons fell until only Ijin and Sukju stood, having taken down nearly 30 men between them. The tension was unbearable as Ijin locked eyes with Taisu, who looked like a cornered animal. Incheon hesitated, contemplating whether to intervene, but before he could make up his mind, Sukju knocked him out cold. Desperate, Taisu picked up his bat, aiming for a worn-out Ijin. But the young man parried the swing effortlessly, counter-attacking with a blow to the throat and a knee to the face. As a last resort, Taisu drew a knife, lunging for Ijin's neck. But even this desperate move was futile. Ijin dodged and subdued him in a punishing hold, bringing him to the ground. It was over. They had won. Lee and Ju slowly regained consciousness, and Young Chan rushed over to check on them. Lee looked at Ijin, offering a thumbs up. In real life, you're the challenger, man. Forget your in-game bronze status. Sometime later, Taisu and Incheon were being berated and beaten by one of their seniors. The older gangster scolded, "You were supposed to gain an advantage, especially now that the Gojin and Sungsa clans are out of the picture." Another figure, presumably the boss, interrupted, ordering that Ijin and his friends be taken down. Break an arm or a leg, make them pay. Back at Dusik's headquarters, Youngsu, his subordinate, reported the embarrassment their men had suffered at the hands of these high schoolers. Dusik sighed. "You've already called for reinforcements?" he asked. Youngsu grinned. "Already taken care of, boss." Each side was upping the ante, and what started as a simple rescue mission was now spiraling into something far more dangerous. Little did Taisu know that he had awakened a sleeping dragon, and for Ijin and his friends, the real battle was only just beginning. When word got out that Dusik had severed his ties with the congressman's shady dealings, his men rallied around him in a show of loyalty. Stepping outside, Dusik was greeted by a sea of faces, all ecstatic to see their boss back in action. "We'll go out for drinks, but first we have some business to attend to," he announced, a satisfied grin on his face. The Dusik clan was back, and they meant business. Meanwhile, as Sukju and Yuna strolled down the street, they were suddenly accosted by Chuman's thugs. "You're coming with us," one of them snarled. But before they could lay a finger on the pair, 3 cars screeched to a halt, spilling out a squad of guards. One of Yuna's personal guards quipped, "Looks like Sukju must have really rattled their cage to get this kind of heat." At a local bar, Dusik and his crew were putting the final touches on their comeback, clearing out Chuman's goons with gusto. When Chuman questioned Dusik's motives, Taisu chimed in, "I thought the Dusik family had quit the underworld." Dusik's reply was cryptic but clear, "Grown-up matters should be settled by grown-ups." Chuman realized that Dusik was talking about the recent high school brawl, and a smile crept onto Dusik's face. "Exactly," he said, "adults should handle adult affairs." Across town, Ijin and his sister Dayun were sharing a simple dinner at a convenience store. As she savored her meal, Ijin's phone buzzed. It was Dusik. "Having dinner with my sister," Ijin said. Dusik invited him to a barbecue, but Ijin modestly suggested they stick to convenience store noodles. Dusik chuckled, agreeing to the humble plan, and hung up. His men had just subjugated Chuman's crew, who were now kneeling in defeat. The next day, school ended and Ju and Lee immediately turned to Ijin and Young Chan. "PC cafe, anyone?" Ju offered. Young Chan expressed concern about Lee's injured arm, but Lee dismissed it, "As long as my fingers work, I can game." Sukju, overhearing the plan, decided to join. "My treat for saving us," Lee said, nudging Sukju. Yuna also tagged along, interested in what the fuss was about. Inside the PC cafe, Lee and Ju bickered while gaming. Ijin and Sukju played with stoic focus, and Yuna observed, occasionally sharing glances with Ijin. After wrapping up their gaming session and saying their goodbyes, Ijin's phone rang. It was Dayun, asking if he'd eaten yet. "Not yet," he replied, and at that moment, his sister and grandfather appeared, suggesting they go grocery shopping together. Agreeing, Ijin felt a sense of contentment wash over him as he spent quality time with his family, chatting and laughing while picking up essentials. Leaving the store, his grandfather questioned whether he was okay carrying all the bags. "I'm fine, Grandpa," Ijin assured him, feeling grateful for these simple, yet profoundly meaningful moments. But for now, as they walked home from the convenience store, Ijin felt complete, his heart filled with the love of his family and the camaraderie of his friends. A blond man, donned in a trench coat, was staring right at him. "Long time, no see, 001, the man called out, using Ijin's old codename. Ijin recognized him instantly. This was 006, a mercenary from his past life. "Is he a friend of yours?" the old man queried, his curiosity piqued. Dayun chimed in, "He looks foreign, doesn't he?" "A friend from where I used to live," Ijin replied cautiously. As he walked over to greet 006, he felt a rush of old memories and emotions flood back. They exchanged stiff handshakes, each aware of the tension in the air. Noticing the tension, Grandpa invited 006 to join them for dinner. "No, I'm just passing through," 006 declined politely. Acknowledging the awkwardness, Grandpa and Dayun decided to give them some space. "How did you find me?" Ijin asked once they were alone. "I heard you were alive," 006 explained, "the camp knows too. They're looking for you." Ijin's eyes turned a dark shade of black. "So, they'll be coming after me. They've tasked me to do it," 006 replied, his voice tinged with regret. "But that's for later. For now, how about some lunch?" They found a little hole-in-the-wall place, slurping down noodles that were surprisingly nutritious. As they ate, Ijin demanded, "How did you really find me?" "Who knows you better than I do?" 006 said. "And your memory, is it back?" Ijin nodded. "What about 032? "Devastated, ever since you died," 006 said, not meeting Ijin's eyes. "But it's better if fewer people know you're alive. That includes 032. Intrigued, Ijin probed, "So, you knew I was alive, but kept it from your superiors?" "When I found the trail of blood you left, I decided not to report it," 006 confessed. "I considered you a friend," 001. "Besides, I figured you must be the renowned mercenary known as Jin." Ijin smiled wryly, confirming 006's suspicions. Just then, 006's phone buzzed. He picked it up, spoke briefly, and slid it back into his pocket. Without warning, he broke a chopstick in half, lunging at Ijin. But Ijin was quick, narrowly dodging the potentially fatal jab. "The order to eliminate you just came through," 006 said, his face a mix of resignation and relief. At that moment, a girl stepped out of the convenience store. Catching sight of them, she mused aloud, "Wow, they're both hot." Recognizing the public setting, 006 retreated. "I can't do this here," he muttered, "but I think you're different now. Better, maybe." Back at the SW building, Suk-ju was in the middle of an exercise routine when his phone buzzed. It was Ijin. "I need a favor," he said urgently. "What is it?" Suk-ju asked, pausing his workout. "I need you to access some surveillance footage for me. And there's someone I need you to keep an eye on." As he hung up the phone, Ijin couldn't help but feel the walls of his two worlds closing in. And yet, despite the looming threats and unsolved mysteries, he felt more alive than ever. Suk-ju's brows furrowed in confusion as he listened to Ijin's request over the phone. "You want me to tap into surveillance cameras and tail someone? That's above my pay grade, Ijin. Besides, stuff like that requires permission from higher-ups and that process can take weeks. I need it now, Suk-ju," Ijin asserted, urgency permeating his voice. A sense of alarm welled up inside Suk-ju. Something was happening, something serious. Meanwhile, at Dusik's place, Youngsa mentioned that Ijin had dropped by to borrow a motorcycle. "That's odd," Dusik mused, "the only bike around here is mine." "Yeah, and he looked serious, man, even intimidating in that uniform of his," Youngsu added. Switching scenes, we find Ijin weaving skillfully through traffic on a motorcycle, a leather jacket hugging his frame. His phone buzzes, and it's Suk-ju. "I've done what you've asked. Been following your target. Odd guy, seems to know about the CCTV cameras. What's going on?" "Personal issues," was all Ijin offered before hanging up. Suk-ju sighed, deeply unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling that Ijin was about to face something, or someone, dangerous. Moreover, the target was a foreigner, beyond Suk-ju's usual reach. Ijin finally arrived at a warehouse, 006 hideout. Time was of the essence, he couldn't let this encounter drag on. He had people to protect, after all, so it had to end here and now. Inside the warehouse, 006 was making preparations. A call from an unknown number interrupted him. "How did you get to Korea so quickly?" "We've just discovered Ijin's here," the voice at the other end inquired. "I was wrapping up a mission nearby," 006 explained, "and given that Ijin and I have a history, I thought I'd pay a visit." "Fine," the caller said, "but be careful. Ijin was a 001 once." 006 chuckled. That was a long time ago. As he put away his phone, he sensed a presence. Turning, he barely had time to see Ijin lunging at him with a predatory glare. The fight was on. 006 reached for his gun, but Ijin was too quick, tackling him and knocking the weapon away. A high-octane hand-to-hand combat unfolded. They seemed evenly matched until Ijin attempted a leg kick, only to have 006 catch his leg and slice it with a hidden karambit knife. "You're better than I thought," 006 acknowledged. Ijin took the hit and used the moment to disarm 006. Seizing the opportunity, he hurled the karambit, disrupting 006's attempt to retrieve his gun. Shots rang out, but Ijin was too quick, ducking for cover. As 006's gun clicked empty, he made a desperate move, lunging for a suitcase across the room. His intent was to run, but he knew in his gut that escape was unlikely. It was a high-stakes game, and both men understood that the end was near. They were like two wolves circling, waiting for the moment to go for the jugular. Both were worn but unyielding, acknowledging each other's skills even as they prepared for the inevitable climax of their life-and-death dance. Ijin's heart pounded as he watched 006 rev up the motorcycle, ready to make his escape. The bike roared to life, speeding away, carrying the one man he had to catch. Thoughts of his family's safety flashed in his mind, leaving him desperate. Just then, a car crashed into 006, sending him sprawling on the ground, unconscious. Out stepped Suk-ju from the driver's seat. "Should I not have interfered?" he asked, his face clouded with uncertainty. Ijin could only stare, shocked and relieved. As they drove away, Suk-ju pondered the chaotic scene back at the warehouse. Ijin, his face a mask of stoicism, reassured him he was fine, although he clearly wasn't. A knowing glance passed between them when Suk-ju expressed concern about having hit 006 too hard. "I looked him up," Suk-ju finally said. "The guy seemed like a normal tourist." "Was he not?" "Don't worry about it," Ijin responded, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Back in the warehouse, Ijin bound 006 to a chair. He knew the man was conscious. "I didn't think you'd have backup," 006 laughed. "My mistake. Who else has orders to eliminate me?" Ijin demanded. "Likely no one. I was closest, and they want this kept quiet," 006 explained, outlining the depth of the shadowy organization's vendetta against Ijin. "But they won't give up, especially the boss." Ijin moved closer, knife in hand, pondering his next move. To his surprise, 006 mused aloud, "Dying at your hands wouldn't be so bad." Yet, Ijin cut his bindings instead. "You have a reason to live. Go somewhere they can't find you." A mixture of shock and realization dawned in 006's eyes. "Your family," he said, as if it were an epiphany. Before leaving, 006, now identified as Liam, warned Ijin that his family would always be at risk. Ijin nodded solemnly. "If they had gone after my family first, this would have been different. But I have a lifestyle to protect." "Consider your information scrambled," Liam promised, smirking as he walked away. When Ijin returned home, the house was quiet, yet he sensed that nobody was asleep. As if on cue, his grandfather emerged from a room, sleepy but concerned. "Why are you still awake?" Ijin asked, his eyes softening as he concealed his injuries. The unsaid hung heavily in the air between them, the danger, the secrets, and the lengths to which one would go to protect their loved ones. Grandpa shrugged off his late-night wakefulness, blaming it on coffee. "Go wash up, Ijin, and get some rest," he said, closing the door behind him. Soon after, Dayun also peeked out from her room. "Don't feel bad about Grandpa staying up," she whispered. "He worries about you." She added that there was food on the table if he was hungry, then gently closed her door. Ijin walked to the dining table and found it laden with homemade dishes. A genuine smile crossed his face at the simple, comforting sight. Meanwhile, Suk-ju's phone buzzed. A message from Ijin displayed on the screen, saying, "Thank you." Suk-ju couldn't help but blush. The next day at school, Ijin approached Suk-ju, who was walking with Yuna. "Can I talk to you for a second?" he asked. The two retreated to a break room, where Ijin began to unravel a thread from his mysterious past. "The person you ran into yesterday was someone from my past. He came here to see me," Ijin admitted. After a few moments of weighty silence, Suk-ju asked if that was all there was to it. Ijin confirmed, suggesting that it was better for Suk-ju not to dig any further into his past. Suk-ju smiled. "I had already figured it had something to do with your past, and I didn't plan to dig any deeper," he assured Ijin. As they returned to the classroom, Yuna curiously inquired what their chat was about. "Oh, Ijin was asking how to level up in a game," Suk-ju fibbed. Yuna seemed puzzled, wondering why Ijin hadn't asked Young-chan, who was closer to his skill level in the game. Suk-ju shrugged, his pride slightly dented. Outside, Dayun was jotting down some shopping notes when a guy approached her, brazenly asking for her contact information. Dayun was taken aback. "That's a bit much, we just met," she refused. His face fell, just as his friend appeared, laughing at his rejection. Annoyed, the guy insisted it was just some contact info, when suddenly, he was smacked in the head from behind. Lee had arrived, having had enough of his pestering. As the guy's friend was restrained by Yu, they walked away, revenge flickering in their eyes. "Are you okay?" Lee asked Dayun. "Yes, thanks for stepping in," she replied gratefully. Not far away, Taisa was led by the guy who had bothered Dayun. "People are disrespecting Gosuk High now," the guy grumbled. Incheon nodded. Rumors have spread, it's time for a cleanup, he agreed. Both men then set their sights on their next target, convinced that it was time for some sort of retribution. The tension in the air was palpable as the guy pointed at Dayun and Ijin. Those are the ones, he declared, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice as he realized Ijin hadn't been there before. Taisu and his men looked at Ijin, and something inexplicable happened. A cascade of flashbacks rolled through their minds. Suddenly, with a snarl, Taisu slapped the guy across his face. You trying to mess with us? He growled. His men joined in, turning their fury on their own informant. Meanwhile, in the sanctuary of their home, Dayun admired Ijin's skill with a knife as he sliced fruit. You're much better at this than I am, she commented, unaware of the storm brewing outside. Just then, Ijin's phone buzzed, breaking the domestic tranquility. He glanced at the caller ID. It was Liam. I've planted some evidence, spread it as far as I could. I'll be operating in that area, Liam reported in a hushed voice tinged with mirth. And when I leave the country, I'll make sure to leave traces of you in other places. I'll do the same, Ijin assured him. Liam chuckled. You died and came back to life. And me, I died while still breathing. It's quite the paradox, isn't it? Yes, it is, agreed Ijin. We won't meet again, Liam said, the finality heavy in his voice. Goodbye, Ijin responded. As the call ended, the line went silent, echoing the unspoken truths and buried secrets between them. Little did they know how much their fates were entangled, how their decisions were shaping an unpredictable future. And as Ijin put his phone down, he felt it, a shiver of foreboding, a harbinger of a storm that was about to break.
Hey, freaking sweetie, you should totally hit that subscribe button for the YouTube channel. You know what I'm saying? Subscribe.